So, resuming the chapter about Guy Fawkes, Rolo has found himself in the Houses of Parliament in the cellar with a rather strange man, and he sits down to listen to his story. Since 1534 and the break with the true church in Rome under Henry VIII, we Catholics have had a bit of a hard time of things here. Edward VI, the boy king, continued strengthening the Church of England from 1547, but when he died in 1553, Catholicism came back in favour during the reign of Queen Mary. She was the daughter of Catherine of Aragon and Henry VIII and was a loyal Catholic. Unfortunately for us, her reign only lasted 5 years, and she was replaced on the throne in 1558 by Queen Elizabeth I, who was very much her father's daughter. Catholicism was once more outlawed, and Protestantism again became the order of the day. King James I, King James VI of Scotland, came to the English throne after his cousin Elizabeth's death in 1603, and there had been growing concern from powerful Spain about the growth and spread of Protestantism in Europe, and all sorts of plots are hatching with a view to overthrowing King James and the newfangled Bible he had commissioned from the Puritans. The king declared that the new parliament would meet early in the new year. The king himself would be present. It was time to act. My friends and I have had enough of this anti-Catholic persecution and all the empty promises. We want to return to the true faith. We've made a plan to get rid of the Protestant king and his parliament once and for all, and we've called our plot the Great Blow. Who are your friends? I asked casually. Robert Catesby, Thomas Percy, Thomas Winter, John Wright. We hatched the plan in a room above the Duck and Drake Inn, and now we have other loyal Catholic supporters coming on board. Robert Winter, John Grant and Christopher Wright, Ambrose Rookwood, Francis Tresham and Sir Everard Digby completes our merry band. Papists, they call us. We're being thwarted by Parliament, however, and they must suspect something is afoot because they keep postponing the date for the opening of Parliament. The latest information we have is that it's set for tomorrow, which is the 5th of November, 1605, with the King in attendance. So tonight I will put the finishing touches to our cunning plan. I thought I could hear my heart beating loudly in my chest as I suddenly realised the danger that Gwyn and I were in. Surely this man was not going to let me escape now I knew his plan as well as the names of his accomplices. Now he was showing me the door that he would escape through. Think, Rolo, think. How are you planning to blow up this building then? I asked as casually as I could. Look about you. He swept his arm around, indicating the piled sacks of grain. On closer inspection, I realised they were concealing barrels of gunpowder. We've smuggled 35 of these in here, and most are already in place. Tonight I will lay a trail, and just before dawn light the fuse. It will be a slow burn and time to perfection. Once the king is inside Parliament, bang! And if all goes according to plan, the true faith will be restored throughout the realm. I could see the man's dark eyes glinting and knew that he was deadly serious. Only problem is, I've forgotten my tinderbox and have no means of making a spark. Then all at once my prayers are answered and you bring me the creature that has the power to light the fuse. Oh no, I thought, this was surely not why Athelstan had sent us here, for Gwyn and yours truly to become conspirators in the Gunpowder Plot. Yulia had mentioned that Gwyn couldn't yet breathe fire, but of course this firemaster wasn't to know that. I hoped very strongly that Gwyn wouldn't suddenly discover his flame-throwing powers during our very dangerous visit to the cellars of the Houses of Parliament. I glanced down at the dragon and realised he had no idea what was going on, although he was now awake. He just sat there blinking in his bag. It seemed he hadn't yet developed the power to read minds either. Shh, there's someone coming. He grabbed me by the collar and held me tightly, my face stuffed into his sweaty cloak. Who goes there? I had an ear up and knew that someone had entered the vaults of the building. Robert, Kit and John, came 3 gruff voices in the dark. My captor let go of me and asked in a low voice what they wanted, as they had all agreed not to meet up, until after the event to avoid raising suspicion. "What is that little dog wearing around his neck?" asked one of them, catching sight of me. "It's called a ruff, never mind that now. What are you doing here? You know what we agreed," said the man. "We have a problem," said another voice. "Someone has written a letter to a member of Parliament advising him not to attend tomorrow's state opening of Parliament. It must be Francis. He's related by marriage to Monteagle and must have warned him to stay away. I knew we shouldn't have trusted him," piped up the third man. They all sounded pretty nervous to me. Wild accusations were flying around the room. "What are we going to do?" "If the ceremony hasn't been called off, then we will go ahead as planned. Everything is in place. I will light the fuse tonight. It will take hours to follow my carefully laid trail to the main store of explosive, right underneath the chamber." The cloaked man sounded confident, and the other three were satisfied and left the building, having crossed themselves and wished each other Godspeed. I wished I could follow them. The next couple of hours were spent keeping a low profile, watching the man tipping barrel after barrel of powder and rolling it carefully to lay a line that would act as a fuse to the pile he wanted to blow. Then the moment I'd been dreading arrived. He seized Gwyn roughly by the neck, pulling him out from my pouch, and entreated the dragonling to breathe fire and light the fuse. There you can see poor Gwyn in Guy Fawkes' hand. The startled dragon blinked and gasped a couple of times, and the man squeezed him tighter, muttering incoherently. I hardly dared look through my pores, as I thought the poor dragon was being strangled. Then the thing I least expected actually happened. Gwyn the dragonling produced the tiniest spark, and at once the man pushed the dragon's face roughly towards the ground and told him to do it again. This time there was a fizz and a flare, and the fuse was lit. It didn't seem to travel at all. It must have been set to a very slow burn indeed. Either that, or there was something wrong with the powder, but I didn't fancy hanging around to see. The man rubbed his hands together with glee and kissed the surprised dragon on the top of his little scaly head. Then he set him down on the floor, and I shepherded him back into the bag for safety, where he sat spluttering and regaining his breath. I expect he was feeling pretty pleased with himself, without having any idea of what he'd just facilitated. The man was heading for the door that would probably take him outside to freedom. He didn't give me a second glance. I wondered what my best course of action was. A quick glance at the fuse reassured me that it didn't seem to be travelling very fast. Well, if the king wasn't expected in the building until 11 o'clock the next day, then the arsonist would be anticipating about 12 hours of slow burn. Suddenly, the underground storeroom was filled with light, and two burly, armoured men carrying flaming torches appeared from a passageway. They seemed mighty surprised to see a small dog wearing a stupid cone round its head. Without wanting to waste any more time, I shouted a warning about the gunpowder and pointed to the door where the man had just pretty sharply exited the scene. Left alone with the slow-burning fuse whilst the guards pursued the fleeing man, I did what comes most naturally to me in the whole world. Yes, I'm afraid I weed on it, and was pleased to see the tiny flame went out with a sizzle, just as I thought it would. I hoped those men were going to be careful with their flaming torches, with all that gunpowder lying around. Goodness knows how far the fuse ran, or where the bulk of explosives lay. "Stop, in the name of the king! You are under arrest!" was the last thing I heard as I fled the scene, with Gwyn bouncing in his leather pannier, heading as fast as my paws would carry us to the time tunnel, where Yulia and Dar were waiting. I certainly didn't want to be caught with the smoking gun. "What was the outcome? Do you know whether they caught the plotters?" I asked Athelstan later, once I'd seen Gwyn safely back to the haven of the quarry. The hatchling was exhausted after such an exciting adventure, and would soon be fast asleep on his nest. "Yes, little pup," said the wise tree dragon. A man calling himself John Johnson was arrested trying to leave the storeroom by royal officials Sir Thomas Knivett and Edward Doubleday, but the man's real name turned out to be Guy Fawkes. The rest of the conspirators were either shot as they fled or later rounded up and captured, tried and executed for treason. To ensure this never happened again, there's always a thorough search of the basement before the state opening of Parliament, although these days it is more of a ceremonial search by the beefeaters. By the way, I think you should know that Gwyn has just discovered how to breathe fire. It's just a little spark at the moment. I dropped in casually and made my way to bed, still wearing the stupid collar, or should I say, ruff. I will try to remember this adventure on the 5th of November, when the floppy-haired boy and his friends celebrate Guy Fawkes failing to blow up the Houses of Parliament by setting off fireworks in our back garden. As in previous years, I will be kept indoors and will no doubt bark angrily through the curtains. I don't like fireworks, as you know, because of the noise they make, but at least now I know what it's all about.